Just gonna test my voice, and that's coming clearly in. Hey guys, and welcome to a new episode of Nomadic Business Insights. It's been quite a while. I'm back in Norway and currently sitting at the LD Vintage shop. And this episode has been part of a little sequence that I've been really looking forward to do. And I have a quite special guest with me here today. And our topic in the very start is going to be how to start figuring out sales for yourself. Let's go, guys.
You are listening to LD Podcast. Would you like to publish with us? Tell us your story at www.ld.studio/podcasts. Edited and published by LD Studio.
Well, guys, it's so nice to have you in here again. As you can see behind me, or if you're watching on video, I'm in our shop in Ålesund, LD Vintage, and it has taken quite a new shape. We're actually having a whole coffee shop set up. Behind me here, I have Noah and a good friend, Roger, who are talking in the afternoon. The store is closed, and yeah, we're here to record this podcast episode for you. And today I got a very special guest with me, as I already said, Aksel from Barcelona, or originally you're not from Barcelona, but we'll get into that. Really nice to have you here today.
Thank you very much. Really nice to be here.
All right. Aksel is... we have a funny history to share. We'll share a bit about how we got to know each other. But first and foremost, I think we need to introduce you a bit, Aksel, because originally you're not from Barcelona, but you've been living there for quite a while, haven't you?
Yes, indeed. So, actually, I'm originally from Venezuela, from Caracas, the capital. When I was about 18, I left because the typical emigration story. But yeah, I lived first in Scotland, then I moved to Barcelona, lived for a few years in Tenerife, been a bit back and forth, and lastly, for the last 5 to 6 years, I've been fixed in Barcelona.
How is Caracas compared to Europe? Like, I mean, 18 years from Venezuela,
Yes.
breaking it through alone in Europe. That's, I mean, I think a lot of our listeners can identify themselves with the journey like that. That's quite a strong story.
Yeah, so where to begin? I mean, completely different words, of course. Also, it's not a fair comparison because I think most of my adult life has been in Europe. Most of my youth was in Venezuela, so probably my perception is a little altered from that. But it's a complete new world. Actually, we're in South America for a while now, so you probably have it fresher than me. But yeah, it's been quite a while.
It's true. I know South America quite well now after a couple of travels. I spent probably almost like 3.5 years in total of my life in South America. But I just gotta imagine that for you, I just try to see a typical, I mean, you're not a typical, but I'm trying to see a typical 18 years old,
Yeah.
How do you still remember like the very first week or month in Scotland?
Yeah, I do indeed. I remember it so well. Actually, it was the very first time that I was in Europe in my life. And I was so fascinated about absolutely everything. I remember just like being in shock because the bus had like Wi-Fi. I couldn't believe it. It's just like, I was like, I cannot believe this. And I was like, I remember like I was like probably cried a little bit at night in the hotel. I was also back in that, I think it was 2013, was one of the hardest years in Venezuela in regards to the situation, economics, politics. We had like no food. I'm being, of course, drastic, but there were long queues, almost no products in the shelves. So I remember being in a supermarket in Scotland and being like absolutely overwhelmed by everything. So
That
yeah,
that sounds almost like a bit of the story my parents shared with me from East Europe when they were, after the Second World War.
when they went to South America, probably.
No. In East Europe, in their youth, it was like that. East Germany,
Okay.
after the Second World War, but so I can actually identify a little bit with that because they have told me quite a bit of stories from that. But
Yeah, okay, because you meant when Germany was like completely economically broke.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, I get you. Yeah, absolutely. Like in I did a year of economics, and we studied the hyperinflation in Poland, Germany, and Venezuela, like as the worst cases that there's been in the last century. So yeah, it's been very similar for sure when the price of like a car ended up being the price of a bread in like a matter of years.
yeah, yeah. No, no,
But yeah,
that's really strong stories, but that's not what this podcast is gonna be
yes,
about. But anyway, it's nice to get to know you a bit, because I think one of the beauty of these podcasts and these episodes is that we get to meet so many different people, and also I feel like this bubble of Europe can sometimes, or the bubble of northern and western countries generally, can get very small. Like, the world is much bigger than that.
yeah,
And it's always a bit weird hearing, people from South America or Africa or Asia, or other countries that feel a bit more rural, come into this bubble, and especially in young age, feeling like, wow, this is the shit. Actually, it's not. Like, I think
yeah,
when you grow up, in many ways you see other values that these developed countries don't have, talking about, for example, culture, lifestyle, happiness, family relationships. There's a lot of things that we leave behind with economical progress.
yeah, definitely, definitely. And actually, it's fun because I say this recently to a cousin, Venezuelan cousin. Sometimes it was so easy, like to feel like there was something better, that in Europe things are better. If I ever move to Europe, everything will be solved. And then you arrive and you find yourself in the reality, which is true for everyone. There's no monopoly in misery. I've been told like everyone has got troubles and Europe has got you their own challenges. And I already absolutely left behind my political, economical problems, and I have new ones, and I have a lot to complain about, but just like every other person. So yeah, definitely it's been a lot of learning. But
But I
as you
think
said,
that's some of the good things also, that actually everyone has some sort of misery. And yes, I'm not trying in any way to justify that all parts of the world shouldn't be the same, economically speaking, but is not always greener on the other side. It's almost
yeah,
never greener on the other side, actually.
yeah,
So
definitely. Everything, everywhere has got their own challenges.
anyway, guys, we're moving into this episode's topic, and this is a topic I know that quite a few people have been requesting, and I think it is not something we in any sort will cover during one episode at all. It's probably something we will have to work through. And also, me and Axel, the reason why Axel is with me in this podcast episode, we'll get back to in a very short time. But we are not experts in this field. We're also just young people finding our way. We're young people growing on the experience month by month, and we're really just here to share what we learn. We're here to open up a bit about the ideas which have brought us to the place we're at, and hopefully in some ways it can help you in any way. If doesn't matter really if you are a business owner yourself, if you want to start a company in the future, or if you're just employed at a place and want to get inspired to take that next step. So thanks for listening in. And yeah, let's move into the topic, Axel. Sales, building relationships, and also on top of that, making money for yourself or making money for your company. It's a big topic to touch.
Huge. It's huge. There's so many layers. Definitely, as you said, we're not experts, but I've been lucky to take place into really important players here in Barcelona and Europe, and I've been able to learn a lot. Yeah, happy to share
Cool.
the things that I've learned.
The reason me and Axel are sitting here with you is we met Axel almost just a year ago. It's not very long. We haven't known each other too long. We met in Barcelona when we spent our summer of closing up pregnancy there. We spent some really nice times together, and in some random way we bonded really well. And during springtime of 2024 we came in the talks of maybe doing something together, maybe working together, and it seems like we're figuring out the way together in one of our companies where we're going to do some exciting stuff together. So we'll see how that develops. But I think on top of all that, it's just nice to share knowledge. Like there is nothing more behind this than sharing knowledge from different perspective. And you, Axel, you have been, I think, before we started this episode, we landed on a very nice expression that you kind of have landed into sales in a very organical way. Do you want to share a bit about that? What do you mean by that? How did you land organically into sales?
Yeah, that's how I feel, because I was not like actively looking for it. I think that will be the opposite case of organic. And also because I discovered that naturally I had some skills that actually work out pretty well in that field. So actually, I started working for a company called Travel Perk, which it's been constantly one of the fastest growing companies in the whole world. Actually, especially in Europe, it's been top 10 in the whole world. It's really
Yeah.
strong. I started in a similar position to customer care. Like it was travel, but I started there. But then about that, getting to know people inside the company, building relationships, and
Let's
everyone.
explain a bit about what Travel Perk is. I mean, people
Yes.
knowing and who are interested about innovative companies that have grown fast probably have heard the name before, but Travel Perk set out not on the road of success from the very start, but they really found their niche eventually.
Yeah, so Travel Perk, it's pretty much a business travel management tool. That's what it is. So it's a SaaS, so software as a service. So pretty much they sell a software that you log in and then you manage your travel. And yeah, they started extremely small. I think it was like 5 people in an Airbnb in Barcelona. And now it's like at least 1.3K, several offices. They actually acquired 2 companies in the UK, one in the UK and one in the States. So, and that was in a matter of 10 years with the worst crisis in the sector that's ever been in the travel industry, which was
Yeah.
COVID.
Yeah.
So they've been remarkable, really. Yeah, of course, they had to find who was their niche, their strong players, which ended up being small and medium companies, not huge companies, which they had to find out the hard way. So yeah,
And one
that's
of their keys to success has undoubtedly been relationship building and also how to build their teams around relationship building. But that's something we'll get into.
yes,
Um, and I think enough about Travel Perk. If you're interested, you should check out the story on your own and research the company a bit. But what about you, Axel? You entered because I think it's important for us to lay this episode out in a way where it can be interesting for pretty much everyone at a young age. And lots of people probably don't consider sales as their field, and some others really consider sales as their field, and they're maybe not the right suitors for it.
yeah,
And you were saying you didn't really actively pursue it, right? But what do
yeah.
you think made you, if you can sum up in a short way, why did you do well from a very early start on, and why did you move on and climb ladders, to put it that way?
Yeah, so a mix of things. So I think it's relevant to bring some context. So I actually arrived to Barcelona with no degree. I started from an ice cream shop, completely related to anything. I studied tourism. I got into this travel company, just like I was flowing, trying to find my way. And that's how I ended up in Travel Perk. And of course, I started to get to know people that were working in sales. You start to ask, you start to see what they do. I came with this very conservative, old school Latino, South American concept of salespeople being
The
super
guy that
smart.
calls you at 9 o'clock in the evening and
Exactly.
like, hey, I have a product for you. Listen me, please, please, please.
Exactly. The annoying people that even sometimes try to lie, or that they just like try to sell you something regardless and they don't care about you. I had like this very negative connotation and concept, I remember, which
So that's why you kind of made that assumption yourself. I don't want to work with sales.
exactly, which spoiler alert, I was wrong. We'll get there, but definitely like I was like, I'm not that. Like that's not my profile. But then like when I arrived into Trollberg, I was naturally bonding with clients. I was building relationships in somewhere that I was not supposed to, because I was just only meant to fix issues with travels, with tickets. And I was being pointed out that actually like, hey, like actually you could do well if you jump there.
Do you
Yes, I think
remember? I think it's such an interesting story though, because we're talking about reality versus expectations, right?
yes.
And maybe a lot of people who have a big talent for sales, they are not pursuing that because they are afraid of their stereotypic image of being a
100%.
sales rep or working with sales or driving sales.
Yeah, 100%. And I include myself there. I was super afraid of. I was like, no, like I cannot be that guy. you know.
Yeah,
I was jumping. I was telling myself like, no, maybe just because I'm Latino, I'm Venezuelan. Like naturally, we tend to be a little more open, warmer, and people
yeah.
here like that. So I was like thinking, no, it's just because I'm naturally like this. But then it ended up just like by coincidence, there was a job opening for a job position, which was a mix. I was still doing something similar, but I was like more actively doing like pitching and sales and having like a portfolio of clients. And that's when I started to step in. I was not too conscious that I was doing that when I applied, but then I started and then I realized that I was like, oh, I actually had to change floors and to go to a different, like, hey, you're now in sales. I was like, oh, really? So it was a little surprising to me. And that's when I started like expectations versus reality that came into play because I was like, hey, maybe it's not what I thought. Like actually sales are not this
And,
concept.
what was your first impression? What was your first where you realized that is not what you expected it to be? Do you remember any? Do you have any clear memories where you thought like, "Wow, no, actually working with sales is really nice."
Yeah, so I don't have a clear specific memory, but I did start to notice that actually clients were happy. I think that also comes a lot with having a good product that you actually help people. So I think that really like shifted my mind because I had this concept of always like annoying people, trying to make them think that maybe they need you. But no, actually it shifted my perspective in like, oh, actually we have a really strong product that helps people with real problems that they have.
Yeah.
And maybe they're actually looking for a solution. And when you knock the door or when you reach, they're super grateful. So it's like, hey, actually people
But
are,
that's sorry for interrupting you, but
yeah,
that's such a nice thing because I think that's what making most people afraid of sales. And I think
yes,
the reason for me wanting to do this episode is to help people. I think everyone who owns a business knows they have to sell, but I do a lot. I do know a lot of people, and I think a lot of people are afraid of doing it or managing it or not taking the next step because they're thinking like, "Oh, I'm doing this just to earn more money. I'm ripping people off." And
yes,
also, I think that's something you probably felt being in a quite fast growing company. Oh, I need to perform here. If not, the company is not progressing like it should. But you're turning the whole image and you're saying, no, no, no. It's not it's not necessarily about the sale. It's not necessarily about higher profits. It's actually because we believe so strongly that we have a product that's gonna make life easier and better for our customers. And I think when you change that perception, it's just a whole other thing. Like if
yes,
you call someone and if you talk with someone and if you meet someone then and you actually have that perception of yourself, the thing I'm going to offer you is going to help that person. And I'm not trying to do it just to increase my own sales. Of course, I have to make a living, so I'm not hiding anything. I'm not a saint,
yes,
but I am actually offering you this because I
absolutely.
do think it's going to make things easier for you.
Absolutely. That was the whole game changer for me. It was realizing that actually the whole purpose of the sales activity was to find out who needs you and trust in your product. That's why like what was the very first thing that you need in sales is to understand and trust your product. If you don't believe in what you sell, you probably won't sell. And if you do, you'll probably the client will complain or your client will charge, which
And that's the hard part as well. I think it's really hard, I don't want to talk down on anyone. That's not my intention. It's really important for me to try to be as reflective as possible because we don't know all the industry that's out there. But for example, let's evaluate like phone calling companies or phone contract companies. Like who is really differentiating the market? Nobody is. Like many of the companies are owned by the same businesses. So how can you dare in a seller feel that you're actually doing something purposeful? I don't think we need to comment on it, but it's just a question that I want to put out there, because you worked in a company that actually had a very valuable product. And I think we're trying to make an episode here for people that are actually working with innovation or trying to put out a company where they feel they can do a difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Without stepping too much into it, as you said, there's some cases which you have no option. Like your target is to sell an improvement of a phone line plan, and it is what it is. Like you have to push in a very cold way because there's no other way around it. But yeah, I think it's not what we are here for mainly. But yeah, like definitely for me, for example, I know that I wouldn't be able to work in sales if I would be doing that.
but
So
that's a very healthy assumption, I think, because then in the end you're actually maybe not, and that's a nice image to pursue to people. You're not actually so hardcore into sales like people would believe. You could be in all kind of other sorts of positions, but what you really are in it for is relationship building and helping
yeah,
people. And I think that's helpful for people to listen into, because if they're trying to build something and they're trying to build a company, then try to switch the image, try to see, okay, if I'm how can I be helpful to others with my product?
yes,
And then sales mentality gonna come by itself, because there is a lot of different ways to be a seller, and that we're going to move into in a later episode and touching this topic. But I think what we want to move into in the ending up this first episode is summing up simple cornerstones of sales, and we also have one more topic to touch in, which kind of starts opening up these cornerstones that you have to master. And the first of those, I mean, we discussed a couple of cornerstones, and I think we boiled them down to 3 cornerstones, which are, you already mentioned it, most importantly, having a very clear, defined product. I don't think that's the place where we want to touch down initially, because it's a very hard topic. It's a frustrating topic, and a lot of entrepreneurs struggle to strap down their
yes.
product.
And also, absolutely agree with you, but also like more than even having something clear, because clarity will come the more you try to
That's it.
sell. And
That's it. That's
exactly,
what I was trying to lead
exactly.
to. That
But
shaping a product will happen by time.
I think like I even listen to this sometimes, but like having a product, of course, that you trust, and having a problem to solve or a gap to fill. I think that's really like relevant. Like being like, I want to do this.
Yeah.
Um,
So obviously we assume that people listening into this either work in sales already or want to learn more about sales or have a product. So this is obviously not an episode about product development, but
yes.
we are going to touch back in a later episode on defining product strategy and defining like clear products, because talking from myself, my own experience as an entrepreneur, it's been so hard through the course of 5-6 years to defining and shaping a product, because you want to do everything. You don't want to limit yourself. You're like, I'm super talented, I can do everything, but you're actually like harming yourself in the
Yeah.
process.
Then if you are everywhere, you are nowhere, as they say.
That's it.
Yeah.
The second cornerstone, which we want to touch down, is having like trustworthy communication, like easy running and trustworthy communication. That's also something that I have experienced firsthand many times. Failing to do that, failing to keep people updated, will lose you the clients.
Yes.
It is as easy as that. It doesn't matter if you don't have time, or if something happens, or that can happen to anyone, but the worst is not being informed.
Yeah, 100%. And understanding who you're talking to and like really respecting people. I think also sometimes we think that people are not that smart, and they're really smart and they're really
Yeah,
aware and they really know what's happening. So really respecting and caring and
yeah. No,
being on
I,
top.
I, I I couldn't agree more. And the third part, which we're gonna jump in a little bit today. So we got having a very clear, defined product, having trustworthy and simple communication. But the third cornerstone, which I think is maybe the hardest to master, and which we're gonna try to touch on a bit in the end of this episode, is building relationships, long-term and lasting relationships. Um, and to open that topic, um, you said a very beautiful thing earlier to me, which was your current workplace where you work today, if you make the right steps, if you keep the relationships the right way, if you're respectful to people and go out the door one day in a good way, that could be your next client.
Yeah, like, and I think like you should realize that everyone's taking that way. Like, so many people are like being the relationship for the present and for the future constantly.
Yeah.
Like everything you do, you're always helping both scenarios. So yeah, I that's what I was mentioning to you. So as soon as you start to build a relationship with internal and external, those people you will keep it with you for your next endeavors, projects, however you want to call it. So
Yeah.
it's super important, always constantly to build that fame, to build that relationship, to build that reputation.
And
So
they don't necessarily have to be your best friend or snug in as a friend. That's not what it's about. I think there is a misconception. Many people think I have to be friend with everyone. I have to be 400 or 500 friends.
I remember perfectly well having relationships with clients or with colleagues in which it would be like we love each other as colleagues,
Yeah.
but we don't connect that much as friends, and that's perfectly fine. And it's like
Yeah.
that's, I mean, vice versa. It's not relevant, but also like it happened in all ways. So it's like, you know what? We work well together. We understand what's the purpose. We both have the same pace. That's amazing. We don't have to
And
be.
and the cool thing is, like, I think if you want to help people to understand what's the difference between a business relationship and a strong friendship, when you grow, you're gonna realize, like, before, when I was younger, I clearly remembered that I felt like, okay, business relationships, you can only like converse about business things, and friends, you can converse about friend things. But that's actually not the case. It's more about how much time you spend together, and if you are, for example, meeting every day in the week, sometimes, hanging out, having drinks, that's moving very towards a friendship. But you can also discuss private matters, you can discuss your holidays, you can discuss family matters with a business relationship.
Yeah, yeah. There's it's a sweet
Or
spot.
do you disagree? Maybe it's different from culture to culture, but at least in the Scandinavia, it's very informal. Like, the way you're gonna breach that personal barrier and become a stronger and stronger relationship is giving more from yourself. Things like mentioning, I had a really rough night because my
Yes,
my
yes.
daughter slept really unwell. That's gonna potentially build the relationship.
Absolutely, no, and I do agree 100% that I wanted to mention like it's a sweet spot, definitely. Like you don't want to overstep, being like telling so much about you, and also you don't want to be full business because I think that if you really bring it down, it's like realizing we're all humans. Like even when I was in customer care and someone got super angry, I always try to bring that person to remind him or her that we are humans. It's like, hey guys, like I get you. And also in the sales spectrum, in the end, we're all people. We're doing business. We're
Yeah.
trying to do good for you. You want to do the best for yourself and your company. So do I. And realize there's a partnership. But yeah, like even right now, my current position, so it's like I'm a customer success manager. So like that's my specialty right now, relationships. Most of the visits you do to clients is to have a coffee and to, I don't know, to chit chat, if I can say that term here, to talk about like usually the less you talk is business. Surprisingly, you devote a little part of it to catch up and see how things are going and maybe point out some things. But then you have a coffee, you have lunch. Then maybe I know a lot of colleagues that they go to party with their clients actually. So it
Yeah.
also depends if it's like someone that is your age, or is someone that you can know very well. Like, it really all depends. But like it's, I think that's also the beauty of it, realizing how to deal with each person, what's
Yeah.
their allowance, what's the culture, what they're looking for.
But it's a good topic which you touched there, which I think we need to dig a bit deeper
Yeah.
into in a future episode. That thing, like, where is that personal line and where isn't, and we're always, as young people, you're always hearing of those stories. Oh, these successful people going out partying together or something, you know, and it is that beauty of eventually nobody can really define, is it a friendship or is it a business relationship.
Yeah.
But I think you acting as true as possible and as simple as possible is going to be the most helpful way
Yes.
to build those relationships. And on the very ending note, I think we just want to touch the topic of you said that your current position is all about building relationships, and the reason your company invested in that is because at the point where something really fails, that's relationship is maybe the only thing that's gonna save that business relationship, the save the client.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a fact. Like, it's not even. That's why each big enough company has got full departments of customer success or account management. Because like in every single moment ever, when you buy something or when you have a business relationship or a personal relationship, expectations will not be met because it is
At
what
some
it is.
point, it will
At
happen.
some point ever, yeah. Could be in 10 years, that whatever, but that will happen for sure. I think you have a guarantee that at some point you will not be aligned, which is supernatural. And the only way to work through it's talking, and it's the relationship part that kicks in.
Yeah.
So it's
How can that translate to, let's say, young people, 25-year-old, building its company, trying out things? Maybe that person is yet not in those very high level relationships, but it's kind of a mentality thing, right? It's a mentality thing where you turn your perception towards, I'm not gonna just try to make money, I'm gonna make this relationship in a way that even though I fail my client, he will still trust me.
Yeah, I think it's well, I think we mentioned that earlier. It's just caring, like empathy. It's a huge word in life and in sales, which the more you're in sales, the more you realize it's really just life. Like, there's a lot of
Yeah.
like sales gurus that tell you that every single day is a negotiation, every single day is you're doing sales stuff, and it's kind of true. Like, all is true. Like, to be fair, it's true. So I think that's the thing that helped me the most, and I think it's the healthiest relationship you can build with yourself, your clients, and with sales. It's caring and doing things for the sake of like really adding value. I think that's a really important phrase also. Adding value to these people, to society, to yourself even as a person. So when you care, things flow. They flow naturally. They follow you. I think lots of people, even myself at some point, of course, you focus too much on money.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you focus less, it just starts to come naturally because you're focusing the things that actually add value and start to bring people to you. So it's like, instead of chasing, attracting, if you want to put it in other words.
Those are beautiful end notes. Like, everything in life is somehow sales, and try to be someone that is attracting instead of pursuing so hard.
Yes.
Beautiful. I think that's it for this time, guys. It was amazing to have you in, Aksel, and I'm already looking forward to the next time. I think we are starting to touch the top of the iceberg, and it is such a difficult topic indeed. Thank you guys for listening in. Thank you, Aksel, for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Have a good afternoon in Barcelona, and we will be in touch very soon, guys. Thanks for listening in. Leave a comment if there is any questions you have, or shoot us a DM, and we'll be back with a new episode very soon.
Thank you for listening to LD Podcast. We are continuously looking for the most talented innovators. No matter your background or expertise, shoot us an email at high5@ld.studio with your skills and portfolio.